Welcome back, friend. Settle in now. Let the lamp beside you glow low. Let the blanket find its place around your shoulders, and let the world outside your window slip quietly away. Tonight, we travel back, not so very far, only a handful of decades, to a damp and gentle evening on the edge of the American Northwest, where the rain is falling the way it has always fallen there, soft and patient and unhurried. It is the 24th of November, 1971, Thanksgiving Eve, the kind of evening that hums in the memory of anyone who has ever lived through one, even if they cannot quite say why. Across the country, ovens are warming. Casseroles wait in glass dishes on kitchen counters. Somewhere, a grandmother is pressing the edges of a pie crust with the tines of a fork, the way her mother taught her, the way she will one day teach her granddaughter. The long weekend is only hours away, and the nation, weary as it is, exhales a little at the thought of it. And the nation is weary. This is a tired year, in a tired decade. The long war in Southeast Asia drags on, and the evening news has grown familiar with grief. Gas is cheap, televisions are wooden, and most telephones still hang on the wall with cords that curl like ribbons. The music on the radio leans soft tonight. A little Carpenters, a little James Taylor, a little Cat Stevens drifting through station wagons and kitchen windows. Somewhere in Iowa, a porch light flickers on. Somewhere in Georgia, a dog settles by a screen door. And somewhere in Oregon, a man in a dark business suit is walking through the rain. Portland International Airport on that Wednesday evening is not the sprawling place it will one day become. It is modest, low-slung, lit with the warm amber glow of incandescent bulbs, not the cold white of the century to come. The terminal smells of wet wool coats and brewed coffee, and the faint, comforting sting of cigarette smoke, for in this America, one may still smoke beneath a sign and no one will say a word. Porters roll carts of luggage across tiled floors. A child in a corduroy jacket presses his nose to the glass, watching the jets breathe in the mist. Outside, the rain pools on the tarmac in shallow silver mirrors, reflecting the blinking lights of a world getting ready to go home. Propellers spin lazily. Ground crews and yellow slickers move with the practiced calm of men who have done this 10,000 times. A Boeing 727 waits at the gate, its tail sloping gently upward, its aft stairway tucked neatly beneath it like a secret not yet told. Northwest Orient Flight 305. Portland to Seattle. A short hop. A half hour, give or take. A milk run, they used to call it. Nothing remarkable. Nothing at all. And into all of this, quietly, without ceremony, walks our man. He is, by every account that will ever be given, unremarkable to look at. Middle-aged, perhaps in his 40s. Slender. Dark hair combed smooth. A pressed white shirt beneath a black raincoat. A narrow black tie. Polished loafers. He carries a briefcase in one hand and a paper bag in the other. He does not hurry. He does not dawdle. He moves the way tired businessmen move at the end of long and ordinary days, like a man who has a train to catch, or a meeting he would rather skip, or a home he is not especially eager to reach. At the Northwest Orient counter, he sets his briefcase down gently. He asks, in a voice described later as soft, as polite, as almost courtly, for a one-way ticket to Seattle. The agent smiles the small professional smile of airline agents everywhere and asks his name. He gives it without hesitation. Dan Cooper. $20 in cash. The ticket slides across the counter. He tucks it into the inner pocket of his jacket. Thanks, sir, and turns toward the gate. Somewhere overhead, a speaker crackles with a boarding announcement. A janitor pushes a wide broom across the floor. A woman in a camel coat kisses her husband goodbye. The clock on the wall ticks past 2:45 in the afternoon, though the sky is already bruising toward early evening, as skies do in Oregon in late November. And that is the last quiet moment in this story, the last breath before the telling, the last small, still room in an ordinary American evening before the door swings open and the wind rushes in. So take one more breath with me, gentle listener. Feel the rain on the tarmac. Hear the low hum of the engines. Watch the man in the black raincoat step onto the jet bridge and disappear inside. The aircraft is about to taxi, and the legend is about to begin. Inside the cabin of Flight 305, the air is warm and faintly sweet, carrying that familiar perfume of the era. Jet fuel on the tarmac, fresh coffee from the galley, a whisper of cigarette smoke already curling near the forward seats. A Northwest Orient stewardess stands at the door in her navy uniform and white gloves, offering each passenger a soft, practiced smile as they file aboard. 36 souls, all told. A short Thanksgiving Eve hop from Portland to Seattle, barely more than a half hour in the sky. Most of them are thinking only of home. The man in the black raincoat steps through the doorway without a sound. He folds his coat neatly over his arm, nods politely to the stewardess, and moves down the narrow aisle toward the rear of the cabin. He is unhurried. He is unremarkable. A businessman, perhaps. The kind of traveler no one would ever be able to describe in detail afterward, because there is nothing about him that asks to be remembered. Dark hair, combed back. A thin tie. Wingtip shoes. A briefcase in his right hand. He finds his seat near the tail of the Boeing 727, row 18, seat C, next to the window on the starboard side. He slides into it the way a man slides into a favorite armchair at the end of a long day. He sets the briefcase beside his feet, tucks the raincoat onto his lap, and gazes out at the rain-slick concrete of Portland International. Across the glass, ground crew in yellow slickers wave their orange wands in slow, dreamlike arcs, guiding the plane toward the runway like monks performing an old and peaceful ritual. The overhead lights glow honey gold. There are no televisions, no glowing screens, no earbuds. A few passengers rustle newspapers. Someone laughs quietly 2 rows up. A child presses her forehead to a window and watches the rain bead and race across the glass. The stewardesses move up and down the aisle with a grace that belongs to another age, asking if anyone would like a pillow, a blanket, a drink before takeoff. When the young stewardess, Florence Schaffner, 23 years old, with a gentle voice and kind eyes, reaches row 18, the man in seat C looks up and orders a bourbon and soda. She nods, writes it down, and moves on. He seems like every other passenger she has served tonight. Perhaps a little quieter. Perhaps a little more composed. Nothing more. The turbines begin their slow, rising hum, a sound like a distant choir warming up in a cathedral. The aircraft eases away from the gate and rolls gently out into the gathering dusk. Outside, the Pacific Northwest sky is the color of wet slate, streaked with bands of mauve, where the last of the afternoon light is bleeding away behind the Cascades. Somewhere beyond those dark ridges, the first stars of the evening are already beginning to show themselves. The plane lifts into the rain. The nose tilts upward. The lights of Portland fall away below, a glittering spill of amber and pearl scattered across the valley floor, and for a long, quiet moment everyone aboard is suspended between two worlds. The world of earth and home and gravy boats warming on stoves, and the world of cloud and engine and sky. Then the seatbelt sign dings softly and the cabin settles into that peculiar floating hush that only happens at altitude. The turbines soften to a low, steady breath. The air grows cool. The windows fog at the edges. Florence returns with a little plastic cup of ice, a small bottle of bourbon, and a can of soda on a linen napkin. She places them on the tray in front of seat C and smiles. He thanks her. His voice is quiet, polite, almost courtly. He pours the bourbon over the ice with a careful hand, watching the amber liquid find its way between the cubes. He stirs it once with a little red straw. Then he reaches into his jacket pocket, pulls out a pack of Raleigh cigarettes, and taps one out into his palm. A book of paper matches appears. A soft scratch. A curl of blue smoke rising toward the ceiling. He sips his drink. He watches the clouds slide past the window, silver and slow, lit from within by the last dying embers of day. The cabin lights dim a touch for the cruise. Somewhere in the front, a man yawns. A magazine page turns. The plane carries them all gently northward through the deepening dusk, toward Seattle, toward home, toward the ordinary ending of an ordinary evening. And the polite stranger in seat 18C finishes his cigarette, sets down his glass, and reaches, at last, for the briefcase at his feet. He unsnaps the brass latches one at a time, and the small click of each is lost beneath the hum of the engines. The briefcase opens only a finger's width, just enough for his own eyes, just enough to confirm that whatever waits inside has traveled safely with him. Then he closes it again, sets it flat across his lap, and folds his hands upon it the way a man might fold his hands upon a hymnal. For a long moment, he only watches the window. The sky has gone the color of blued steel, and far below, the rivers of the Pacific Northwest glitter like threads of mercury unspooling toward the sea. Somewhere down there, a farmhouse light blinks on. Somewhere, a kitchen is warming for Thanksgiving. He seems, for just a breath, almost tender, almost sorry, the way a traveler is sometimes sorry for a country he is only passing through. Then, very calmly, he reaches into his coat pocket and draws out a small envelope. It is a sort of envelope you might find in the drawer of any hotel desk in America. Plain, unremarkable, a little creased at one corner from writing there all afternoon. He holds it a moment between two fingers, considering it the way a man considers a card he has been saving for the right hand. And then he lifts his eyes, gently, and looks for Florence. She is only a few rows up, leaning over a passenger, pouring coffee from a silver pot, her smile the polished, practiced smile of a woman who has flown this route 100 times. Florence Schaffner, 23 years old, a girl from Arkansas with dark hair tied back in a neat navy ribbon, who still, on quiet evenings, cannot quite believe she has become the sort of person who lives out of a suitcase above the clouds. He raises one finger, the smallest gesture, and she comes to him. He does not speak. He only smiles, a small, courteous smile, and offers her the envelope. Their fingers brush for a half-second, the way strangers' fingers brush 1,000 times a day in this country, at lunch counters, at ticket booths, at church collection plates, and then the paper is in her hand, and he is settling back into his seat as though the transaction is already complete. Florence glances down at the envelope. She has seen this before. Oh, she has seen this many times. A single woman in a crisp blue uniform, moving up and down an aisle, learns early that the loneliness of men in transit finds 1,000 small ways to announce itself. A phone number scrawled on a napkin. A hotel key pressed palm to palm. A folded note, slipped across the armrest with a hopeful, bashful smile. She almost laughs. Not unkindly. She is not an unkind girl. She simply tucks the envelope into the small pocket of her apron the way she has tucked so many others, and turns to walk back up the aisle, already thinking about the meal cart and the landing checklist and whether her mother remembered to defrost the turkey. And then she feels him watching her. It is not a rude watching. It is not a leering watching. It is something quieter than that. And because it is quieter, it stops her. She pauses in the aisle, one hand resting lightly on the seat back, and turns, and finds that he has leaned forward just slightly, just enough, and is looking up at her with eyes that are very steady and very kind. "Miss," he says, his voice hardly more than a whisper, meant only for her. A small, almost apologetic pause. The words arrive softly, the way snow arrives softly, settling before you quite understand that the weather has changed. She stands very still. The engines hum. The overhead lights glow their gentle amber. Somewhere behind her, a child laughs at something a mother has said, and the sound is small and far away, like a bell heard across a field. Slowly, very slowly, she takes the envelope from her apron pocket. Slowly, she unfolds the page inside. The handwriting is neat, almost schoolbook neat. The letters squared and unhurried, the hand of a patient man. And then, because he is still watching her, and because his voice has been so very gentle, she lets her eyes drift, just once, down to the briefcase resting on his knees. He tips the lid open, only a little, only for her. And there, nested in the dark, she sees them, 8 red cylinders, bound side by side, like the pipes of some small, terrible organ, and a tangle of wires looping between them in soft, sleeping coils, and, half hidden at the edge, the round glass face of a single large battery, quietly, patiently waiting. She does not scream. That is perhaps the strangest, softest thing about this whole strange, soft evening. That Florence Schaffner, 23 years old, with a small gold cross at her throat and a pen still tucked behind her ear, does not scream. She only breathes out, very slowly, the way you might breathe out after stepping from a cold room into a warm one, and she closes the briefcase for him with her own steady hand, because he has asked her to, and because, somehow, in this quiet exchange, they have already become a kind of pair. He gives her a note then, folded once, the creases sharp and patient, and he tells her in that low, unhurried voice to carry it forward to the cockpit. And she rises, smoothing her uniform the way a girl might smooth a dress before company. And she walks up the gentle slope of the aisle, past the sleeping shoulders and the tilted heads, and the paperback novels lying open on laps, and no one looks up, because nothing in the world, just yet, looks any different than it did a moment ago. In the cockpit, Captain William Scott reads the note twice. He is a careful man, a veteran of many skies, and he reads it the way one reads a telegram bringing difficult news, once for the words and once again for the meaning hidden beneath them. $200,000 in $20 bills. 4 parachutes, 2 back, 2 chest. A fuel truck waiting on the tarmac when they land. No tricks, no heroes. And then a postscript, almost polite, noting the bomb in the briefcase in row 18. He folds the note. He looks at his co-pilot. And then, with the same calm hands that have carried 1,000 travelers safely through weather and wind, he reaches for the radio. Outside the windows, Seattle is beginning to glow. The city slides beneath them in a slow, pewter dusk, the street lamps just now blooming awake one by one, pale as early stars. A soft rain is falling, the kind of Pacific Northwest rain that does not so much fall as hover, settling on windshields and shoulders like a held breath. Down on Interstate 5, the evening commuters are driving home, their taillights strung along the curves of the freeway like a necklace of warm red beads. Mothers are turning onto side streets. Fathers are pulling into driveways. Somewhere, a boy is riding his bicycle under a sky the color of doves, and he hears the drone of the plane above him, and he does not look up, because planes drone overhead every evening in this sky, and there is nothing to see but cloud. But the plane has stopped flying toward anywhere. The plane is turning now in a long and lazy circle, tracing a wide ring above the city, and the city does not know, and the boy on his bicycle does not know, that the circle is being drawn for him, and for his mother, and for every warm lit window below. A circle of waiting drawn in the sky, while somewhere on the ground men hurry from desk to desk with telephones pressed hard against their ears. At Northwest Orient headquarters, a vice president named Donald Nyroff is pulled from his Thanksgiving Eve quiet. At the FBI field office in Seattle, agents are rising from chairs and reaching for coats. Phones are lifted and lowered. Decisions are made in the soft official murmur of men who have done difficult things before. And the decision, in the end, is a very old and human one. Pay him. Give him what he asks. Bring the passengers down safely and let the rest of it, the chase, the mystery, the long unraveling, come after. A bank in downtown Seattle is opened in the gathering dusk. A vault is turned. 10,000 $20 bills are counted out, each one already photographed, each serial number already whispered onto a microfilm reel that will outlive most of the men handling it tonight. The bills are heavy. 21 pounds of paper, bound in neat bricks, carried in a canvas bank bag the color of a winter sky. And high above, Flight 305 goes on turning. Round and round it goes, a slow second hand on the face of the evening, while the rain drifts down over the rooftops and the rivers, and the passengers doze with their heads against the cool glass, and in row 18, A man in a dark business suit orders another bourbon and water, and pays for it, and tips, and smiles, as if he has all the time in the world. And in a way, tonight, in this soft, circling hour, he does. And then, at last, the wheels come down. You can hear it before you feel it. That soft mechanical sigh beneath the floor. The long, sleepy unfolding of steel and hydraulic, like a great bird lowering its legs toward the water. The lights of Seattle rise up to meet the 727, pale and smeary through the rain, a whole city of little yellow windows breathing in the dusk. SeaTac appears below in constellations of blue taxiway lamps and amber runway edge lights, all of it softened by the drizzle, as if someone has laid a sheet of wax paper between the plane and the world. The tires touch down so gently you could almost miss it. A little shudder. A whisper of rubber on wet concrete. And then the long, patient rollout, the engines easing back into a lower hum, the cabin tilting ever so slightly as the aircraft finds its heading and turns toward a distant corner of the field, far from the bright terminal, far from the curious eyes of Thanksgiving travelers who are right now shaking rain off their coats and hugging their families hello. Flight 305 does not taxi to a gate. It comes to rest out on the apron, alone under the floodlights, a silver shape in a silver night, its wings beaded with tiny bright drops of rain. Inside, the cabin has not been told a thing. The stewardess moves down the aisle the way she has moved 1,000 times before, a calm voice, a steady smile, the sort of smile that has carried passengers through turbulence and lost luggage, and the occasional crying child. She leans to each row and says, almost kindly, that there has been a small mechanical matter, and that everyone will be deplaning here for their comfort. No alarm. No hurry. Just the gentle suggestion of an inconvenience, the way a hostess might mention that dinner will be a few minutes late. And the passengers, bless them, simply believe her. They gather their coats and their paperback novels. They fold their newspapers and tuck them under their arms. A woman checks that her hat is straight. A businessman slips his pen back into his jacket. A little boy is lifted, sleepy warm, onto his father's shoulder, and he rests his cheek there without ever opening his eyes. They file off in neat, orderly rows, down the forward stairs and onto a waiting bus, their faces turned up briefly to the rain, none of them knowing, not one of them, that they have just walked past the strangest night in American aviation and out the other side. And in row 18, the man in the dark business suit stays exactly where he is. He watches them go. He watches the last head disappear down the stairwell. He finishes his bourbon, the ice gone now to a thin little shiver of water at the bottom of the cup. He sets it down on the tray table, careful, as if tidiness still matters. Perhaps, to him, it does. Outside, under the wet lights, a fuel truck rolls up on fat black tires, its hazard lamps blinking slowly, slowly, like a lighthouse. A second vehicle follows, an unmarked car, low and official, throwing up little silver fans of spray. A man in a raincoat steps out carrying a paper sack, not a briefcase, not a strong box, just a soft, rumpled paper sack, the kind you might bring home from the grocer, its top folded over twice and clutched in both hands, because it is heavier than it looks. Inside that sack are 10,000 $20 bills. $200,000 counted out from a Seattle bank vault in the last warm hour of a Thanksgiving Eve. Their serial numbers quietly, secretly recorded, though no one in this moment, on this wet tarmac, seems to be in a hurry about anything at all. Behind him, another agent carries 4 parachutes, 2 main canopies, 2 reserves, bundled in their nylon packs, damp with the mist, looking for all the world like sleeping bags brought out for a camping trip. They are handed up the aft stairs. The paper sack first, passed carefully, almost tenderly, the way you might hand someone a newborn. Then the chutes, one by one. There is no shouting. There are no drawn weapons. There is only the soft hiss of rain on aluminum, and the low idle of the fuel truck, and the distant, dreamy drone of another airliner climbing somewhere off to the north. It is, in its way, the most courteous robbery in the history of the country. And through the oval window of row 18, the man in the dark suit watches the money come aboard, and nods, just once, to no one in particular. A small, private nod, the kind a man gives when a long-awaited guest has finally arrived at the door. And then the money is aboard, and the parachutes are aboard, and the last of the fuel has whispered its long, cold song into the wings, and there is nothing left for the world outside to give him. He lets the passengers go. One by one, 36 strangers rise from their seats with the careful slowness of people who have forgotten, for a little while, how their own legs work. They gather coats. They gather purses. They do not look at him, and he does not look at them, and this small mutual kindness is perhaps the last courtesy of the evening. A stewardess walks them down the aisle with the gentleness of a shepherd, moving a flock through a narrow gate, and at the forward door they step, one after another, into the drizzle of Seattle, into the soft amber puddles of the taxiway lights, into the rest of their ordinary lives. They will remember this night forever. But for now, they only want dry socks. The cabin, when the last of them has gone, settles into a different kind of quiet. Not the hushed, held-breath quiet of the hostage hours, but something emptier and larger, the quiet a theater keeps after the audience has filed out and only the ushers remain, folding programs beneath dim house lights. There are the 2 pilots in their cockpit, and the flight engineer at his panel, and one stewardess, small and steady, her hands folded in her lap like a girl at church. And there is the man in row 18, with his briefcase, and his dark glasses folded now into his pocket, and a canvas bag of money tucked between his ankles like a sleeping dog. He gives his instructions in the same low, patient voice he has used all evening. Mexico City, flaps at 15 degrees. Landing gear down. Cabin unpressurized. Altitude 10,000 feet. Airspeed no more than 200 knots. And the aft stairs. Those strange folding stairs that drop from the tail of the Boeing like a drawbridge lowered over a moat. The aft stairs are to be left unlocked. The captain listens. The captain nods. The captain, who has flown through thunderheads over the Rockies and ice storms over the Great Lakes, who has landed this same aircraft in crosswinds that would peel the paint off a barn, does the arithmetic in his head and decides, calmly, that all of this is possible. Slow. Low. Dirty, in the language of pilots, dirty with flaps and gear, hanging in the sky like a kite on a short string. They will not make Mexico City, not like this. They will have to sit down in Reno for fuel. But that is a worry for later. For now, there is only the next thing, and the next thing is to fly. The engines wake again, one after the other, a long, sighing breath drawn through the cold, dark metal, and the great pale wail of an aircraft rolls away from the gate, lumbering down the wet tarmac with a patience that seems almost tender. Rain streaks sideways across the windows. The runway lights blur into long, soft ribbons of gold. And then, with a gathering rush that presses every loose thing backward, Flight 305 lifts once more into the black. Seattle falls away beneath them like a handful of scattered coins. They bank southward, out over the darkening fields and the silver coils of the Columbia, and the clouds come down to meet them, low and woolly and forgiving. The plane holds itself just beneath the ceiling, skimming the underside of the weather, and below, the forested spine of southwest Washington unrolls in the dimness, mile upon mile of Douglas fir and hemlock and cedar, rivers threading between them like pale veins, the occasional small light of a logging road or a farmhouse window winking up out of the vast green dark. The engines drone. The airframe trembles gently, the way a cat trembles in sleep. In the cockpit, the altimeter holds steady at 10,000 feet. In the cabin, the air grows thin and cold, and the stewardess, sent forward to join the crew, closes the curtain behind her as she goes and does not look back. He is alone now, in the long, empty tube of the cabin. Alone with the money, and the parachutes, and the hum of the engines, and the slow sway of the aircraft as it carries him southward over country he has perhaps known all his life, or perhaps never seen until this moment. Snow clouds are gathering off to the east, thick and bruise-colored, heavy with what is coming. The little reading lamps cast soft yellow pools on the empty seatbacks. And somewhere behind him, at the very tail of the plane, the aft stairs wait, unlocked, unlatched, a door laid quietly open into the sky. At 8:13 in the evening, a small amber light blinks to life on the flight engineer's panel, quiet as a candle catching. It is a warning, technically, though it does not wail, does not flash red, does not demand. It only glows, a steady, patient little sun no bigger than a thumbprint, telling the cockpit, in the polite language of machines, that the aft stairway has lowered itself into the night. Captain Scott leans forward and studies the light the way a man studies a star that has appeared in an unfamiliar part of the sky. He does not panic. There is nothing, really, to panic about. The aircraft is steady. The engines are steady. The three men in the cockpit are steady. And outside the narrow windshield, the world is a slow black river of cloud and treetop and hidden water. He keys the intercom and speaks softly to the back of the plane, as one might whisper to a sleeping child in a nursery down the hall. The words travel along copper wires, through the hush of the cabin, past the empty rows, past the forgotten coffee cup on a tray table, past the soft yellow reading lamps still burning over no one at all. A voice comes back, faint, almost kind. That is the last word anyone will ever hear him say. A moment later, perhaps a minute, perhaps two, the plane gives the smallest of shrugs. It is so gentle that the stewardesses, strapped into their jump seats near the front, barely feel it. Just a little dip, a little lift, as if the airplane has taken a breath and let it out again. The nose rises, a fraction of a degree. The tail settles, a fraction of a degree. The autopilot, ever the calm nurse, corrects and trims and rocks the big bird back to level. Something has left the aircraft. Something has stepped out into the dark. Below them, the Pacific Northwest unrolls in blackness. There are no city lights here, no highways, no towns. Only the endless hushed corduroy of fir and hemlock, ridges folded into ridges, rivers threading between them like silver hair. The rain has begun to fall, soft and cold, the kind of rain that blurs the edges of things. Snow hovers somewhere up above, waiting its turn. Down there, in the timber, the deer are bedded. The owls are hunting. A black bear, perhaps, turns in her den and sighs. Into all of this, a man falls. He falls through freezing air at 200 miles an hour, the wind taking his necktie, taking the brim of his hat if he still wore it, taking the breath from his mouth. The briefcase is gone. The paper bag of $20 bills is strapped to his chest with cord he has cut from one of the spare parachutes, tied in knots only he knows. He falls, and the airplane flies on without him, growing smaller in the sky, its lights becoming a tiny constellation, then a single star, then nothing at all. We do not know what he was thinking. We do not know if he pulled the ripcord early or late, or if the canopy opened cleanly above him like a flower unfolding in the dark, or if it did not. We do not know where in those 100,000 acres of wet, wild, roadless country his feet touched the earth, or whether they touched it gently, or whether they touched it at all in any way a man might walk away from. We only know that from this moment forward he belongs to the forest and to the rain, and to the long memory of the American imagination. The plane flies south. It flies through weather and through folklore. It crosses the dark backs of mountains with names like Silver Star and Table and Yakult Burn, names older than the airline that carries them. Captain Scott keeps his course. The flight engineer watches his little amber light, still glowing, still patient. The stewardesses sit very still in their jump seats and do not speak, because there is nothing yet to say. At 10:45, Flight 305 touches down at Reno, Nevada. The runway lights bloom up to meet the wheels. Police cars are waiting, their red lights turning slowly like lazy pinwheels. Men in suits climb the stairs with careful faces. They move through the cabin, row by row, seat by seat, and they find exactly what the crew already knew they would find, which is nothing, and no one, and a single black clip-on necktie lying abandoned on a seat, and a mother-of-pearl tie pin, and 8 cigarette butts curled in an ashtray like small gray question marks, still faintly warm. By the time morning comes to the Pacific Northwest, the rain has settled into that soft, patient kind that does not fall so much as drift, hanging in the air like a held breath. The sky over southwestern Washington is the color of old pewter, and the forests below are the deep, mossy green of a story you already half remember. Somewhere beneath that canopy, they believe, is a man. Or perhaps only the memory of one. Or perhaps only a canvas bag of money, sinking slowly into the soft throat of a river. The search begins almost before the plane's engines have cooled. Sheriff's deputies in heavy wool coats gather around the hoods of their cruisers, tracing their fingers along wet maps that crinkle in the damp. The FBI arrives in dark sedans, carrying coffee in paper cups that steam in the cold like little chimneys. By mid-morning, soldiers from Fort Lewis are pouring into the woods, young men with rifles slung across their backs, walking shoulder to shoulder in long, patient lines through ferns that reach their knees. They move the way you might move through a dream, slow, steady, faintly uncertain, listening for the smallest sound beneath the drip, drip, drip of water off the cedars. Helicopters thread their way low over the treetops, their rotors beating a soft, hollow rhythm against the hills. From the air, the forest looks like an endless green sea, with the Lewis River curling through it in silver ribbons, and the Columbia far to the south, wide and slow and patient as a great sleeping animal. The pilots squint down through the rain, looking for a flash of white nylon, a scrap of torn fabric, a glimmer of something that does not belong. Mostly, they see only the tops of Douglas firs swaying gently, the way tall grass sways in a summer field. On the ground, the search parties wade through creeks that have overfilled their banks. Boots fill with cold water. Coats grow heavy. Dogs nose through the underbrush, tails wagging with cheerful, untroubled purpose, following scents that always seem to end at the edge of some clear, indifferent stream. Men kneel to examine broken branches, disturbed earth, the small mysteries that a forest offers up to anyone patient enough to look. And then they stand and stretch their backs and move on. In the little towns along the rivers, Ariel, Amboy, Woodland, Battleground, the hunt takes on a different shape. In the taverns, old loggers bend over maps pinned to the wood-paneled walls, their thick fingers tracing ridgelines they have known since boyhood. They drink coffee and black beer, and they tell stories about the old trails, the forgotten logging roads, the places where a man might walk in and never walk out. They speak the names of creeks the way other people speak the names of cousins. They remember the elevation, the drainage, the shape of the wind when it comes down a certain valley in November. Some of them draw small, careful X marks where they believe a parachute might have come down. Each X is a different X. No two of them quite agree, and yet somehow they all agree that the man is out there, somewhere, being quietly folded into the country. Meanwhile, rumor travels faster than any helicopter. In coffee shops from Portland to Seattle, the story grows and softens, like bread dough left on a warm counter. Someone saw a stranger walking along a roadside at dawn, wet to the bone and smiling. Someone else heard that a farmer's dog would not stop barking at a patch of timber behind the barn. A gas station attendant recalls a man in a dark suit who paid for a coffee with a crisp $20 bill and never said a word. Each story is polished and passed along and polished again until the facts go smooth as river stones. And still the rain keeps its gentle rhythm over the hills. The soldiers camp at night in muddy clearings, their tents glowing like soft orange lanterns in the dark. Owls call across the valleys in their long, slow voices. Somewhere a branch creaks, and a deer steps out into a meadow, and the whole forest seems, for a moment, to lean in and listen. For days, and then weeks, the hunt goes on this way, methodical, vast, tender in its thoroughness. Thousands of acres are walked. Rivers are dragged. Ponds are drained. And yet, For all the boots on the earth and all the eyes in the air, the Pacific Northwest keeps its quiet counsel. It has swallowed rivers and lost cities and whole generations of trees. It can surely hold one man in a business suit, and the secret of where he fell a little while longer. Time in the Pacific Northwest is measured not in hours but in seasons. Rain fills the rivers, and the rivers carry what they carry, and the forests go on breathing their slow green breath, and the years slip by like driftwood on the tide. One winter becomes another. The headlines shrink. The agents at the Seattle field office rotate in and out, and the thick manila folder labeled NORJAK grows a little dustier on its shelf, and the sketch of a man in a dark suit and a narrow tie begins to yellow at the edges. 9 Thanksgivings come and go. It is February of 1980 now, a soft and early spring afternoon along the Columbia River, about 9 miles downstream from Portland. The place is called Tena Bar, a low, pale crescent of sand where the great river slows and widens, where cottonwoods lean over the water and herons stand like gray monks in the shallows. A family has come down from the city for a picnic. The Ingrams. The father is building a small cook fire, smoothing the ring of stones with a patient hand. The mother is spreading a checkered cloth over the sand. And their son, Brian, 8 years old, freckled, serious as small boys sometimes are when given an important task, is in charge of the driftwood. He is told to clear a patch of sand so the fire can be laid flat. He kneels. He begins to sweep the sand with the edge of his forearm the way a child sweeps, in little half moons, humming to himself. The sand is cool on top and warmer just underneath, the way sand always is by a river in winter sun. He digs a little. He digs a little more, and his fingers touch paper. He pauses. He brushes. He uncovers the curling corner of something soft and dark, something that has the feel of wet leaves, or old cloth, or the pages of a book left out in the rain. He tugs, and it comes up in a small, sodden brick. And then another beside it. And another. 3 bundles. 3 little packets of weather-rotted paper, fastened still with the thin, perished remains of rubber bands, and between the pulped layers, unmistakable even to an 8-year-old, the green and gray faces of Andrew Jackson staring out from $20 bills. There are $5,800 in that small sandy hollow. 290 bills in all. And when the FBI arrives, and when the bills are carefully lifted and cataloged, and the serial numbers checked against the long, long list that has lived in the NORJAK file for 9 quiet years, every single one of them matches. Every single one belongs to the ransom handed up the aisle of Flight 305 on Thanksgiving Eve 1971 to a polite man in a dark suit who asked for it in a soft, unhurried voice. For a moment, the country holds its breath again. The sketch comes down off the shelf. The reporters return. Surely, they think, surely now the river will give up the rest. Surely the body, or the parachute, or the briefcase, or the other $194,000 will come floating in on the next tide. But the river gives nothing more. Agents with shovels and sifting screens work that little crescent of sand for days and then weeks. They find no more bills. They find no buckle, no scrap of suit, no bone, no tie clip, no sunglasses. no trace of the man himself. The three bundles lie there alone, as if they had been set down by a careful hand and then forgotten, or as if the river, in all its long patience, had chosen to return only this much and no more. And here is the deepest strangeness of it. The Columbia at Tena Bar does not flow from the place where Cooper is thought to have jumped. The currents do not agree with the geography. The bills are rotted, but not rotted the way money rots after 9 years in river water. The rubber bands, though perished, are still partly intact, and rubber bands in a river do not last 9 winters. The sand above the bundles has been dredged within the decade and layered freshly. So how did the money arrive? When did it arrive? And by what hand or what current or what quiet accident of the world? No one knows. No one has ever known. The little boy on the beach has handed the mystery back to the grown-ups. And the grown-ups, for all their maps and their theories and their careful, patient sifting, can only stand at the edge of the water and wonder. The river flows on. The cottonwoods lean. The herons, undisturbed, go back to their fishing. And somewhere upstream, or downstream, or nowhere at all, the rest of the ransom lies sleeping still. 50 years is a long time for a secret to keep its shape, and yet this one has held, soft and stubborn as river stone. Somewhere in a beige government building, inside a cabinet of case files, a folder stamped NORJAK was quietly closed in the summer of 2016. No fanfare. No headline to match the ones from 1971. Just a clerk's hand, a drawer sliding shut, and the long exhale of an agency that had at last agreed to stop chasing a man who may not exist anymore, if he ever did. But of course, closing a file is not the same as ending a story. Stories are stubborn creatures. They live in the rafters of old roadhouses and in the corners of diner placemats, in the margins of notebooks kept by children who grew up to be grandparents still wondering. Drive through the little towns along the Columbia, Ariel, Woodland, Amboy, and you will find him still. His composite sketch hangs behind the bar at the Ariel store, faded now to the color of weak tea, the pencil lines softened by decades of wood smoke and laughter. Tourists tilt their heads at him. Regulars tip their glasses. Every November, when the cottonwoods go gold and the rain comes back to stay, someone raises a pint to the quiet man in the narrow black tie. Out along the riverbanks, the amateurs still come. They come with metal detectors and hip waders, with printouts and theories folded into their jacket pockets. They come in kayaks and on foot, in pairs and alone, in the gentle hours between breakfast and noon. Most of them know they will find nothing. That is not quite the point. The point is the walking itself, the soft crunch of gravel underfoot, the way the mist rises off the slow green water, the quiet companionship of a mystery that asks for your patience and gives you in return a morning outdoors. They are not really hunting a man. They are hunting a feeling, the small, bright thrill of being close to something unknowable. In living rooms across the country, retired agents sit in their favorite chairs and read the latest theory. A new suspect, a new DNA clue, a new engineer with a new reason to believe. They read it over coffee, and then they set the paper down, and then they shake their heads, not unkindly, the way a grandfather shakes his head at a clever grandchild. They have heard this one before. They have heard them all. They have spent careers learning that the truth, when it comes, rarely arrives with trumpets. Sometimes it simply never arrives at all. And they have made their peace with that. Mostly, though on gray afternoons, when the rain ticks against the window, some of them still find themselves thinking of a jump door swinging open in the dark and wondering, what did he want, the quiet man in seat 18C? Was it the money, plain and simple, enough to buy a small house, a new name, a different life? Was it a grievance, a debt, an old wound that needed settling in the currency of spectacle? Or was it something stranger and smaller than that? A man who simply wanted, once in his life, to step out of the narrow corridor of his days and fall, briefly, through the open sky. We will never know. That is the gift the story keeps giving. It gives us the shape of a man and lets us fill him in ourselves. High above the Pacific Northwest tonight, the stars come out the way they always have. The Big Dipper tips its slow ladle over the Cascades. Orion leans across the river. A satellite drifts through, patient as a paper boat. Beneath them, the forests breathe in their dark, untroubled way. Somewhere a great horned owl calls once and once again, and is answered. Somewhere a porch light clicks off. B. Cooper turns over in sleep and dreams of flying. And so we leave him there, where he has always been, not caught, not found, not quite lost either. A whisper in a stand of Douglas fir, a signature on a faded bar napkin, a small polite nod from a man in a black tie and a raincoat, stepping off the back of a Boeing 727 and into the soft, forgiving dark. The FBI closed his file. The Rivers kept his secret. The stars, as stars do, declined to tell. Who was the quiet man in seat 18C? Perhaps, in the end, it is enough to ask the question. Perhaps the kindest mysteries are the ones we carry with us into sleep, like a warm cup set down beside the bed, still faintly glowing. Good night, traveler. Wherever you went, whoever you were, good night.